Welcome back to another paper discussion, the show where we explore the intersection of technology and society. And today we're diving into a question that's on many minds. Will AI take my job? We'll be discussing a recent study titled, Will AI Take My Job? Evolving Perceptions of Automation and Labor Risk in Latin America by Andrea Cremaschi, Dejin Lee, and Manuel Leonelli. This research analyzes survey data from over 48,000 individuals across 16 Latin American countries, examining how fears of AI-induced job loss have evolved over time.
Okay, so here's a number that really grabbed me. Back in 2018, almost 7 out of 10 people in Latin America thought a robot could take their job.
Or a family member's job.
Yeah, or family members. That's around 69%. It really makes you wonder, what's behind that kind of widespread worry?
It's a fascinating window into how people in the region are seeing AI and automation. And that's exactly what we're digging into today.
Okay.
We're doing a deep dive into this really comprehensive study. It tracked feelings about job loss from AI and robots across Latin America over several years.
Got it. So what kind of data were we working with for this deep dive? What are we unpacking?
Well, we've got survey data from Latino Barometro. It was collected in 4 different years, 2017, 2018, 2020, and 2023.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it gives us a pretty broad view. We're talking over 48,000 people across 16 countries in Latin America.
16 countries, okay.
And our goal really is to map out these perceptions, see what the patterns are, understand what drives them, and importantly, how they've maybe shifted over time in this region.
So basically, we're trying to get a handle on the landscape of AI anxiety in Latin America, like how it's changed, what causes it, and if different groups or countries see it differently.
Precisely. We want to get a clear picture of what's shaping these views. It's a key region globally, but sometimes it doesn't get the spotlight in these specific tech discussions,
Right. Okay, so with all that data, where do we start? What's the big picture? How are people generally feeling?
Well, looking across all those years, the most common answer when people were asked about AI and robots taking jobs was simply agree.
Disagree.
Yeah, that was about 45.6% of all the responses. So nearly half.
Okay, almost half agreeing. But that 2018 number you mentioned, nearly 70%, that really stands out. What was happening then?
You're right. 2018 was definitely a peak. Almost 69.3% agreed. The fear seemed particularly high that year. What's interesting, though, is that even though 2017 wasn't quite as high overall, it actually had the biggest proportion of people who strongly agreed, more than any other year.
Any idea why 2018 was such a peak? Was it something specific in the news about AI?
The study points to maybe a couple of things. First, like we mentioned, the question in 2018 was slightly different. It asked about risk to their job or a family member's job.
Okay. That broadens it.
Exactly. It naturally widens the potential impact people are thinking about. Second, it's possible that 2018 was just a time when AI and automation were really hitting the headlines, lots of public discussion, maybe fueling some anxiety.
That makes sense. Like when a new tech really breaks through into the mainstream, you get that mix of excitement and worry.
Definitely.
What about differences between countries? Was everyone feeling this the same way across Latin America?
Oh, not at all. There were some real variations. Brazil, for example, showed a quite high polarization.
Polarization, meaning strong opinions on both sides.
Exactly. You had a big chunk of people strongly agreeing and a big chunk strongly disagreeing about the risk. Very divided. In most other countries, it was more like a U-shaped trend. Concern went up in 2018, then seemed to dip a bit in 2020, maybe during the pandemic focus. And then it sort of rebounded somewhat in 2023.
Okay.
And that up and down pattern could be linked to media cycles again, or perhaps people starting to see AI actually being used more in their workplaces or daily lives.
Right, it becomes less abstract.
Yeah.
So, okay, we see these overall trends and country differences.
Yeah.
But what makes one person more likely to worry than another? What are the key predictors?
Yeah, the study dug into that and found some really consistent factors. The biggest one across all the years was education.
Education. How so?
People with lower levels of education consistently expressed more fear about AI taking jobs. It seems like higher education might act as a sort of buffer, maybe giving people skills seen as less automatable, or just a greater sense of adaptability.
Okay, that's a really clear finding. What else popped up as important in shaping these fears?
Political ideology was another pretty significant predictor.
Really? How did that play out?
Well, the research found that people identifying more towards the left politically tended to express more concern, especially in those peak years, 2018, and then again in 2023.
Interesting. Any thoughts on why?
It might tie into broader concerns often associated with left-leaning perspectives, things like labor rights, worries about inequality, and maybe skepticism about whether tech advancements will benefit everyone fairly.
That makes sense, connecting it to those wider social concerns. Were there other factors, like age or gender?
Age played a bit of a role. Younger people seem slightly more concerned sometimes, but it wasn't a super strong or consistent pattern across all the data. Gender was even less predictable. Its impact varied quite a bit year to year.
Okay.
Oh, and city size also seemed to matter somewhat. There might be a bit of an urban-rural divide in how people perceive this risk.
So it's a mix then. Your education, where you live, your politics. What about general feelings? Like how people feel about the economy, or if they trust the government? Did those things link up with AI job fears?
You'd think so, right? But the study found it was a bit mixed. Economic outlook sometimes predicted fear, but it wasn't nearly as consistent or powerful as education or political ideology.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yeah, especially compared to studies in, say, wealthier countries, where economic anxiety often links strongly to tech fears. Here, maybe, as you said, is just part of a wider picture of economic uncertainty.
Possibly. What about trust in institutions? Government, parliament, courts?
Trust did play a role in some specific countries, definitely. But looking at the overall year-to-year trends for the whole region, it seemed to be more of a secondary factor compared to education and ideology. However,
Yes.
when we start looking at specific groups of people within the population, trust becomes more relevant again.
Ah, okay. And this brings us to those latent societal profiles you mentioned earlier. Tell me more about those.
Exactly. So the researchers used a statistical method to see if people naturally cluster into groups based on their shared attitudes, backgrounds, and their AI fears. It's like finding distinct mindsets within the population. And they identified 4 main profiles, 4 groups.
Okay, lay them on me. What are these groups?
First up, they called them the optimistic institutionalists. These folks generally trust institutions, feel pretty good about the economy, both personally and nationally, and they come from a mix of backgrounds.
And their AI fear level.
Lowest of all the groups. They seem the least worried about AI taking jobs.
Makes sense. If you trust the system and feel okay economically, maybe tech change feels less threatening. Who's at the other end?
That would be the disillusioned pessimists. These individuals tend to have negative views on the economy, very low trust in institutions, they skew a bit older, and often live in smaller towns or rural areas.
And their fear level.
Consistently the highest. Across the board, this group reports the most concern about AI job displacement.
Wow. So pessimism about the economy plus low trust really fuels that anxiety. Who are the middle groups?
Okay, third profile. The moderate progressives. These tend to be younger, more educated people. They have sort of medium levels of trust in institutions, feel pretty good about their personal economic situation, and often lean center-left politically.
And their AI concern.
Kind of in the middle range, not as low as the optimists, not as high as the pessimists.
Got it. And the last one.
The last group is the distrustful urbanites. Living in big cities, capitals mostly, they have low trust in institutions, like the pessimists, but their economic outlook is mixed, maybe okay personally, but not great about the country. They're also generally more educated.
And their fear level, also intermediate.
Yeah, intermediate fear levels too. But there's a hint in the data that their concern might have been ticking upwards more recently compared to the moderate progressives.
Interesting dynamic there.
Yeah.
So the big picture from these profiles is, it's not simple, is it? Fear isn't just about one thing.
Not at all. It really highlights that worrying about AI and jobs isn't just a direct reaction to the tech. It's woven into this whole complex tapestry of beliefs, your economic reality, your trust in society, where you live.
Yeah.
And it's really striking that the disillusioned pessimists are always the most fearful, even when you account for things like their trust levels. It suggests some really deep-seated anxieties might be at play there.
Okay, this has been a really insightful deep dive. If we had to sum up the key takeaways about AI job fears in Latin America, what should we remember?
I'd say first, the concern is real and it fluctuates. That 2018 peak was significant. Second, education and political ideology are really strong drivers. Lower education, left-leaning views often correlate with more worry.
Right.
And third, these societal profiles show it's not just isolated factors, it's about the combination of attitudes and circumstances that shapes how people view AI's impact on jobs.
It really drives home how your own background, your beliefs, even where you live, can color your perception of something huge like AI. And the variety across Latin America shows we can't paint everyone with the same brush.
Absolutely. Understanding these nuances, these different perspectives, is going to be crucial as AI keeps developing and integrating into our lives. It's not a one-size-fits-all fear.
So thinking about all this, the different profiles, the changing texts, what kinds of conversations should we be having, what solutions do we need to explore to make sure these advancements work for everyone? This study really hammers home that it's about so much more than just the code or the robots. It's tied up in our whole social, economic, and political world. Definitely gives you a lot to consider.